Oh, what was that? Can you all still hear me?
We could hear you.
Okay, not sure what that was. Okay, all right, let's just start that over. Okay. I want to thank everyone for joining us for today's webinar, Vending in MicroMarkets, Learning from the Past to Succeed in the Future. I'm Abby White, editor of Automatic Merchandiser and VendingMarketWatch.com, and I will be your moderator today, and I swear it's going to go a lot better than it already has. I can feel it. So before we begin, I want to share a few words about this webinar technology that we're using. So this platform allows our audience to be more involved with the presentation, and more importantly, it allows you to watch the event the way that you want to watch it. So to begin, feel free to customize your webcast console. You can move the windows around by dragging on the title bar or by resizing your windows by clicking on the lower left-right corner of any window. You'll notice there's a toolbar at the bottom of your console, and these buttons allow you to open and close the engagement tools on your screen. If at any time you experience difficulties with the audio or advancing of the slides, simply press your F5 key, and that will refresh your webinar console. We encourage you to ask questions at any time using the Q&A tool on the left side of your screen. If we're unable to get to your questions during the webcast, we'll do our best to reach out to you afterwards. Also, I want everyone to know that we're offering today's attendees a PDF copy of the presentation. This locked PDF can be downloaded now or during the on-demand version by simply clicking on the green Event Resources icon that you see on the engagement toolbar. So for today, we'll be talking with Dan Sebastian, who's the Senior Manager of Channel and Customer Insights at Tyson Foods. We'll discuss how consumer trends in the food and beverage industry are constantly changing, which is something you all know. By examining past consumer behavior, especially during pivotal points in history like the Great Recession, operators can better respond to trends that are reshaping shopping and consumption preferences. We'll also talk about the new factors that the COVID-19 pandemic brought into play and how food and beverage preferences and snacking behavior has shifted. So with that, Dan, I will turn the mic over to you.
All right, thank you. So hello, everyone. I'm Dan Sebastian, and I'm based in Northwest Arkansas. As Abby mentioned, I'm on a category leadership and analytics team supporting our food service business at Tyson Foods. Prior to this role, I was on our consumer insights team supporting our food service poultry business based in Chicago. So thanks for spending the next hour with us. Our goal is to take you through consumer and market trends that you can use to help adjust or validate your current business strategies. These are the three pillars we're going to cover today. What we're seeing with consumer reaction towards COVID and traffic trends within grocery restaurants. We'll also touch on key learnings from the Great 2008 Recession and how those trends are relevant today. Then we'll finish off with a look at consumer behavior and how that's amplified key growth opportunities in a marketplace. So what we're seeing. We've conducted research across 1,000 consumers, general population, back in April, June, and August to understand COVID concern levels and when they expect social distancing to end. As you can see in the top left, the percent of consumers that are extremely or very concerned has dropped 10 points since April. However, when we asked, when do you expect social distancing to end? Most consumers now expect social distancing to end either spring or summer of 2021 versus summer of 2020 when COVID first hit. On the right shows consumer COVID concerns. As you can see, consumers are still concerned about economy, their personal finances, and health. This information helps us understand how the industry will be impacted long term. In addition, we know when there is a recession or when consumers are concerned about finances, consumers spend their dollar wisely on what's familiar to them and what will perform to their standards. And we'll talk about that more and what that looks like. So now let's take a look at foot traffic trends. But first, let me give you a background on where this data comes from. We recently subscribed to a new vendor vendor partner that allows us to see foot traffic in grocery and restaurants by week with a 1-week lag. This enables us to identify trends much faster so we can make better business decisions. They are able to capture foot traffic by your cell phone location. A consumer has to be within the operator's parking lot or inside the location to be considered as a trip. So as you can see, there was a big uptick in grocery traffic when COVID was declared a national emergency back in early March. At the same time, restaurant traffic took a big hit on restaurants took a big hit on traffic. As states opened up, restaurant traffic started to pick up again, closing the gap on grocery. So let's take a quick view on how traffic is trending versus a year ago. As you can see in both charts, the bars represent weekly trips this year, while the line represents last year's trips. On the left, grocery is trending to last year's numbers in the last month, so it's great for grocery. On the right, food service still shows a delta versus a year ago. Traffic in food service has stayed within negative 25% to negative 30% the last 2.5 months. As a result, you may have seen articles or a lot of local restaurants temporarily or permanently closing over the last couple of months. Because traffic has taken a large hit on restaurants, we know over 50,000 restaurants have permanently or temporarily closed since March of 2020. That equates to 7% out of 700,000 restaurants that have been closed, or more than half are coming from our independent restaurants. But on a positive note, we've been tracking this since June, and the closed restaurants have remained at 7%. This is something our organization keeps an eye on because COVID has been very fluid with trends in the marketplace. So let's talk about what we've been seeing and the learnings from the last Great Recession of back in 2008. So we'll switch gears to what we've learned and how that's relevant today. So during the 2008 recession, which lasted about 4 to 5 years for food service to bounce back, we saw a great deal of emerging themes around value, affordable indulgences, consumers turning to comfort food, and wanting healthier options and high quality. 2008 was the birthplace of the $5 footlong and deep discounting such as value meal, dollar menu, and other incentives like BOGOs. 10 years later, we still see deep discounting with deals like the $1 for 10 nuggets that hit market October 2018. The tail end of the recession, and as we started to recover from the recession, counting calories was a big trend, and we saw operators promoting meals under a certain amount of calories. At the same time, operators were elevating their menu to offer healthier and high-quality options. That trend has remained relevant today. Lastly, when a recession hits, consumers turn to affordable indulgences and craveable comfort foods where they know their dollar will perform to their standards. Some of examples of what comfort foods are, think of pizza and burger, and some examples of indulgences are shrimp jambalaya, Philly cheesesteaks, dessert with breakfast like pancake with pineapple. Similar to restaurants, grocery had major themes during the last recession that are relevant today. Established and value-oriented brands perform well, along with frozen and shelf-stable foods to reduce spoilage and waste. Then there is the affordable indulgences, comfort, and healthy solution trends that we saw in food service, which also plays a role in the grocery landscape. Another trend we noticed during the last recession was snacking. Between 2008 and 2010, snack foods increased by 4.8 billion snacking occasions, or plus 1% per capita. And a main snack consumers sought comfort through was salty fruit, and dairy snacks. Their main motivators for snack occasion growth were craving and convenience. As you plan your product mix, value is important to consumers. We saw growth in discount stores like mass, dollar, and club versus grocery stores. We also found that lower income households use snack foods more at meal occasions as budget strategy. So let's talk a little bit about what we've seen differently through COVID. One of the main shifts we've seen happen during COVID months was an amplified increase of delivery usage. As you can see on the left, these stores have experienced an increase in delivery during COVID. 29% of C-store consumers ordered for delivery versus 20% prior to COVID. We don't anticipate this behavior to stop post-COVID. In fact, off to the right, you can see consumers plan to use more off-premise modes in the future, such as drive-through, order by phone, or app, and do less ordering at the counter and less of eating on-premise. We're seeing that shift today in traffic. Prior to COVID, off-premise represented 70% of total commercial restaurants. During the last 3 months, ending July 2020, off-premise represents 90% of total traffic. Consumers have recalibrated spending and redefined the traditional norms of value. During the recession, value is about consumers trading down and making sacrifices. Today, it is increasingly about weighing not only the cost of goods, but the multitude of benefits they offer as well. Increasing demand around functional foods and beverages that support health, specifically geared towards immunity. Also, consumers have grown to expect to have what they want, when they want it, and where they want it, with no sacrifices to quality and safety. Often, consumers are willing to pay for it to a certain degree. The digital landscape has a major role to convenience. Looking at the last 3 months ending July 2020, digital orders in restaurants has increased by 138% versus a year ago, which includes digital delivery and digital pickup. Despite the sudden change in household finances, for many, price sensitivity did not see an uptick. Instead, consumers note interest in brand name products, as they now feel it is worth to pay more for items and products that carry names they recognize and trust. For my last data slide, we wanted to end by showing you an important new trend. We asked consumers, after shelter-in-place restrictions are lifted, which do you think will be more important to you? As you can see, safety takes the #1 seat. And for your knowledge, safety was not defined in this question, so it's whatever the consumer perceives as safety, which can be plastic barriers, wiping down surfaces, requiring face masks, etc. We believe this new trend benefits your channel as you have more control over execution of your locations. So I just wanted to wrap this up with some key takeaways. Deliver against cravings. What that could look like for you is individually wrapped chicken sandwiches. Differentiate from other channels. You have a great advantage on self-automated self-service. Focus on value that shoppers recognize and make loyalty a habit. So I'll kick it back over to Abby.
Great, thank you, Dan. A lot of good data in those slides there, and I think it's really interesting to look at what's happening now with COVID in comparison to the Great Recession. So thank you for kind of taking us back and walking us through. So now I'll kind of focus a little bit more on how this has affected operators with vending and micro-market accounts. Obviously, a lot of the same trends that we're seeing in food service or in grocery or in restaurants are affecting our consumers as well. And what we've tried to do over the past few months is just really keep a constant open dialogue with our operators to see what they're experiencing, what tactics they've used to survive during this time, and maybe some innovations and good ideas that have come out of this, because a lot of times during a recession or an economic downturn, a lot of creativity and good ideas can bring some new approaches to the table. So we'll try to cover what some of the operators have been doing, and hopefully everybody can find some new approaches to apply in their own businesses. So first of all, let's go back to spring 2020, which kind of feels like a lifetime ago at this point. But when the COVID-19 pandemic started, there was just obviously a lot of confusion. This was a new thing, and a lot of businesses were having to deal with mandatory shutdowns. In different regions, there were varying levels of safer at home restrictions. And so for a lot of accounts, some people were just having all of their employees work from home. Some had to shut down entirely if they were a non-essential business. So for operators, depending on what kind of account mix you had, you might have suddenly seen your business just completely drop. Or, if you were serving a lot of essential businesses or, just distribution centers or food delivery, things like that, you might have seen, a higher demand because a lot of restaurants were closed and employees might not have had as many options for dining, and suddenly vending and micro-markets were it. So, we did hear from operators that, if they had a heavy account mix of educational institutions, non-essential businesses, businesses that rely upon a lot of visitor traffic, like hospitals or prisons, that, they just really, those accounts went pretty dormant for a while. So then as the summer, started to progress and it became obvious there was going to be no quick fix to this, businesses were starting, to reopen in phases. Maybe they would be bringing their employees back to the office in shifts, or they'd have people coming in at different times to make sure everybody was safely socially distanced. But that actually brought a new opportunity on, because there were still a lot of restrictions around restaurants, and it was just difficult to leave the office, especially if your employer put, new safety protocols into place where you have to sanitize when you come back in, or you have to make sure you have a temperature check. And, if you've got a 30-minute lunch break, that's going to really eat into your time to, take a break and enjoy your meal. So at that point, micro-markets and vending were providing a lot of really great, convenient food and beverage options for those employees. And of course, for operators, as Dan just pointed out, safety is the number one concern for consumers. So for operators, it became essential to really, make sure that all CDC and World Health Organization guidelines were being followed, not only within their operation, but when their employees were out in the field. And so safety just became, everybody kind of had to refocus. And, for anyone who's been thinking about business growth over the past few years, that whole shift had to go to business survival. So that's pretty much how this whole summer has been. But as I mentioned earlier, what this has also done is kind of, revealed some of the opportunities that we have within convenient services. We have, first of all, we're on site. We're right in the employee's workplace, so we're the most convenient option for them a lot of the time. If they want to get fresh food or a quick snack or beverage, we're the easiest thing for them to get to. But also with things reopening now, there's more competition. As Dan pointed out, we don't anticipate things like drive-through delivery pickup to lessen at all. People realized how much more convenient some of those digital services became as restaurants and, even grocery stores and C-stores started offering them, that now there's a little bit more competition in that space. So convenient services operators really have to up their game in order to stay competitive. So, and again, as we're kind of still working through this phase of the pandemic, people are still a little uneasy to go out into the world and go into restaurants. So there's still an opportunity here for operators to really stake their claim and provide those good options on site in the workplace. So again, safety, safety, safety. We just cannot say it enough today. So in addition to really making sure you have established, very clear safety protocols within your own operation, it is essential for you to communicate that with your clients. And your clients are going to have different needs, based on their particular office environment. Some of them might want you to come in maybe half as frequently as you did before to service vending and micro-market accounts. Some of them might ask you to just meet somebody outside the dock and drop off everything, and then they'll actually stock the micro-market themselves. I mean, it varies across the board. So in order to avoid losing business, it's really important to talk with your accounts and find out what makes them comfortable. Find out how to work with them and adjust. And also make sure that your employees who are servicing these accounts know what to expect when they get there. And, make sure your employees are armed with the right PPE. A lot of operators have even started, carrying PPE items, whether they're doing it through vending machines or just offering them in the break rooms. A lot of employers are willing to pay for this to have it on site and available to their employees. It just kind of makes everyone feel a little bit safer to know that's around and that people can use it. So, a lot of people had to kind of go back to the drawing board and think about sourcing differently and finding ways to fulfill all these needs for their clients. And I've just heard a lot of stories from operators about how they did that quickly this year and just pivoted and found different ways to provide solutions. And I think that's where, again, we really can capture our space in the market by showing all of our accounts that we're giving them this extra layer of security and safety, and we're meeting their needs to get them the food and beverages that they want. So another kind of side effect to this is that, COVID-19 also really brought out the best and convenient services. I've heard so many stories of just how operators have gone above and beyond in their communities to either donate food and beverages to frontline workers or, support area food banks. You all know this is something operators do year-round anyway. Operations tend to be very involved in their communities and supportive of nonprofits, and, whether it's donating some surplus food and beverages or just making, special snack boxes to drop off at hospitals. We've heard just so many stories that we actually created a special newsletter, which I'm sure many of you saw throughout the summer because we just had so many positive stories to share. So I think that's an important silver lining. It's a nice thing to do in your community, but it also builds goodwill, and it gives your customers, I think, a sense of pride to know that they're working with a company that cares about their community. So that's kind of a nice thing that came out of the horrible pandemic. So obviously, if, as I mentioned earlier, if you had accounts where you saw a decrease in your business due to shutdowns or employees working from home, there was definitely a short-term decrease in sales. So even if your revenues are lower than you want them to be right now, and I'm guessing that's the case for a lot of the operators out there, it's really important to remember that during the Great Recession, that was the birth of MicroMarkets. That came out of that economic downturn, and look at how that has changed this industry. So I think it's time to kind of think about what might be emerging from this downturn and what kind of lessons can we take from this and make our industry even stronger as we emerge from this pandemic. So for one, I think we have a great opportunity right now to recapture business. So as I mentioned, you're aware that there's a lot of phased reopening of businesses. Offices are starting to welcome some people back into the workplace, maybe in staggered shifts. These people are going to need food and drinks while they're at work, and some of them are still going to be hesitant to go outside of the workplace, especially if they don't have a long break. So this is a great way to go back and get those micro-market customers and vending customers buying food and beverages again. We're on site, we're providing good value, we have a lot of options, and it's convenient. It's just time to make sure we're getting in front of them again and we're servicing those accounts. And that's something I think that you can talk to your accounts about if they're hesitant to keep the micro-markets and vending machines stocked. This is an employee benefit still, and it shows that they're taking care of their employees by providing it. And also, for workplaces that had a cafeteria, many of them had to shut down during the pandemic. Nobody wants to go to a buffet right now, and there's just been so many restrictions around, changing cafeteria environments and food service. So for a lot of these employees, micro-markets and vending were really the only option. And I think as long as you are refreshing your product mix and kind of looking at what people really are buying in the micro-markets and vending machines, you can still make sure you're meeting their needs and providing new items to them that are going to keep them excited and keep them coming back. So another thing that we've seen, and this goes far beyond our industry, is just cashless and mobile payments on the rise. And you're all aware this trend has been increasing throughout the years anyway with technological advances and, everybody using their smartphones for everything. But right now, people are a little hesitant to touch cash. And so if before you had a difficult time getting people to download an app to use a certain payment service, right now it's kind of second nature for a lot of folks. They're getting used to doing it in the grocery store, at the gas station, at the convenience store, everywhere that they go. And so for now, that layer of just hesitancy has kind of been removed. And so I think that really puts us in a very strong position, because as we know, cashless payments, people tend to spend a little more than when they're just using straight up cash. So I think that's something that can come out of this pandemic and strengthen us as well. And another thing that we've seen with this is we talk a lot about loyalty programs and promotions in MicroMarkets, particularly, and in vending. And, it's something I think that a lot of people might have kind of pushed to the bottom of the priority list this year, because obviously there were many more important things to think about during the pandemic. But this is actually a really good opportunity. If you have more people embracing cashless payments and downloading an app, this is a good chance to get them to start the loyalty program. And that's kind of the hardest barrier, is just to get them to download it and enroll. And if you can do that now and they can see the benefits, that they can earn points and get free things, you can really target promotions to them and really refine the way that you work with your customers. And again, just establish that loyalty. I mean, that's why it's called a loyalty program. You keep them coming back for more, and you find out more about what they actually want to purchase, and that helps you stock your micromarket and your vending machine with the products that consumers really want. And so I basically kind of went through that, jumped the gun on that one. Another thing that you can do with your loyalty program is you can really personalize those promotions. I think that's something that we've talked about a lot in the past couple of years, is that when you track all this consumer behavior, you can suddenly start sending them personalized emails. You can use those screens that are on the kiosks in your micromarkets, or the screens that are on the vending machines, to push promotions. And, it doesn't have to just be whatever is about to expire, or whatever you're trying to get rid of in your warehouse. Now that you have this data about this consumer behavior, you can tailor those promotions directly to them at certain times of the day. And, thinking about doing like a coffee with a pastry or a protein bar in the morning, a different kind of a lunch strategy. There's just so many options there. And I think this is a really good time to embrace some of those promotions, especially knowing that out in the outside world, there's restaurants and everybody's offering, free delivery and pickup and doing all these things, just trying to get people back using them as opposed to us. So it's really time for us to up our game with loyalty programs. And obviously, there are a lot of big threats to the industry's recovery right now. As Dan pointed out, delivery, drive-through, pickup, that's not going anywhere. We've seen our competitors really work hard to make all of their services more convenient for consumers, so they're really starting to play in our space more. And, you see convenience stores, offering a lot more fresh food and meals to go, and grocery stores putting food halls in there. And, if you're in a dense urban environment, your micromarket customer can easily walk to any of those really quickly and grab lunch and come back. So, I think we really need to, again, think about offering a variety of quality items that meet consumers' needs for snacks and meals, or whatever they're looking for throughout the day when they're at the workplace. I think as we move on from this too, we're going to see a little bit more about how consumers might change those preferences too, as suddenly people are back in the office, and it's going to be an interesting year as everything starts to reopen again. So let's need to kind of keep an eye on what our competitors are doing. It's just always important to keep an eye on them. But again, I think where we really intersect here is the convenience plus quality equals value. And, as Dan pointed out, value matters. That's something that we saw during the Great Recession. We're seeing a lot of those same trends, as he noted: affordable indulgences, healthier options, and comfort foods. So we can't just offer everybody's favorite snacks. We also have to offer functional foods, because people are thinking a lot about health and immunity. We have to have meal options. We have to have snack options. It's a lot for an operator to juggle. But by really having clear communication with your accounts and talking to them about what they want and comparing that to what's selling, I think we can really meet their needs during this time, because, they're stressed out too. And for anyone who is, for all of your accounts, they are looking to you to kind of guide the conversation and guide what's popular in the industry right now and what's trending. So it's really important to stay on top of all of that. And again, it's just a reminder that this is an employee benefit. You know, if employers want to keep their workers happy, this is something that they need to provide on site to show that they're taking care of them. And, you know, a well-stocked micromarket and vending machine is a really good way to do that. And just having those options on site, you know, it just relieves any tension and any need for the employees to leave the workplace to get what they need. And so that's why, you know, even though it's been a really, really tough year for everybody, I am confident after many conversations with operators and suppliers that automated retail and self-service can be the winners in this post-COVID-19 world. And we have the opportunity to really recapture our place in the market and grow it. So I hope that that gives a little bit of optimism in what's been a very difficult year. But again, just by looking back at what Dan taught us about the Great Recession, I think we can look forward to some brighter days ahead. So that's basically all that I have here. So we can open the floor to questions. Okay. So I have a question here. So what events are you looking for to tell you that sale might be rebounding? What events? I don't know if that maybe means like trends in the economy. Dan, do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, sure. So some of the events that we look at internally are, there's multiple things that we look at. One, I think we're all waiting for a COVID vaccine. We're also looking at what are some of the behaviors prior to COVID, so going back to normal, if you will. And that's all about consumers, just people getting out and about. Abby, you touched on it, people going back to work, going back to the workplace. One of the data sources that we have that we look at is, we talked a little bit about where ordered, so off-premise, delivery, but we also have visibility to where eaten. So are people eating at home, in the car, and there's also a line item called at work. So right now, we can see the last 3 months ending July 2020, at work, where eaten is down quite a bit, it's down 30%. So we keep an eye on that month to month. We're also looking at data around closures of restaurants. Luckily, it's only been right around a 7%. There has been a shift of temporarily closed to permanently closed, but that permanently closed has only been increasing slightly given the temperature of the marketplace. So those are some of the events that we're looking at to identify when we could start to see sales and rebound.
Great, thank you, Dan. Another question just came through. How do you see the coffee industry going once more offices open up? I can try to jump on that one, and Dan, if you want to add anything, please feel free to. But, you know, that's something we've heard from a lot of operators that office coffee service was kind of like the largest hit part of their business, simply because a lot of people just weren't in the office, and a lot of companies were looking at ways to just kind of reduce their overhead, so they just put a pause on their office coffee service. What I'm hearing now is that as offices are reopening, you know, it's coming back kind of in phases. Obviously, with fewer people in the workplace and with social distancing guidelines and some staggered scheduling, that shifted a little bit. But, you know, what we believe and what operators kind of tell us is that coffee is a necessity at work. You know, people need to have coffee at work, but the way that it's being delivered has shifted. And so I think we're seeing a lot of touchless solutions come out. You know, a lot of coffee suppliers and manufacturers have, you know, created pretty easy technology to upload, you know, the bean-to-cup machine that you have to allow for your mobile phone to kind of serve as the place that you customize your drink and pay for it if it's a paid drink. So I think as more operators are offering those solutions to their clients, hopefully we'll see more office coffee service rebound, just because it's something that people expect to have in the office, and it needs to be done safely. So we're optimistic again that it will pick up, but it's kind of hard to say when. Again, to Dan's point, you know, until we have a vaccine and until, you know, workplaces get a little fuller, it's still probably going to be a slow recovery.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I'll add on. I could
Okay.
add on to that a little bit. From the coffee standpoint, coffee's biggest day part is obviously morning meal, and morning meal is really driven off of traffic. People going to work, people going back to school, dropping off their kids to school, so on and so forth. And we're starting to see that come back to life. We're especially here in Northwest Arkansas, kids have gone back to school for high school and grade school. So morning meal actually was hit the hardest from a day part perspective. In traffic last 3 months, it was down 21%. So we're going to keep a close eye on that. We're optimistic, like Abby said, that as people go back to the workplace and go back to school, morning meal occasions will start to get back their share. And as morning meal gets back their share, coffee is the biggest driver to that.
Great. Thanks, Dan. That's encouraging. Okay, so another question here. Do you think spreading food service across a corporate campus with solutions like mobile scan pay and the controlled access coolers helps retain business where employees may not be as willing or able to visit the main micromarket? Let's see. Dan, do you want to take that one and then I can add on?
You know what? I'm sorry. Can you repeat that question again?
Oh, of course. Sure. Do you think spreading food service across a corporate campus with solutions like mobile scan pay and controlled access coolers helps retain business where employees may not be as willing or able to visit the main micromarket?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest barriers as to, or learnings as to why people bring food to work is because they don't have time. So spreading around food service around the corporate campus will definitely help with that because it'll be more convenient for them to get their meal solution, especially when you think about a lot of folks have been working from home and then transitioning back into the office, just that mentality of, gosh, I'm busy. Spreading around food service around a corporate office will help with that convenience factor.
Definitely. That completely makes sense. Okay, another question here. Do you see an emergence of take-home meals appearing in pods from micromarkets to reduce employee stops to and from the office? I think this question is asking about like stocking with products that they can actually take home at the end of the day, if I'm interpreting that right. I've heard just kind of anecdotally about some operators trying that, like, putting in a gallon of milk or toilet paper, which for a while there was, the most precious thing people could buy. And I've heard varying levels of success with that. Some operators tried it and said people really didn't buy it. And some of them, put some new products in and then, tried it for a while, but then as grocery stores became more stocked, it wasn't as necessary. I think, again, that kind of depends on the location of the business, whether or not, it makes sense in theory. Put in a couple items in your micromarket that, keep your customers from having to keep the micromarket customers from having to make an extra stop on the way home. It completely makes sense in practice, but I think it kind of depends maybe on the environment, on whether or not people are taking advantage of that. But Dan, have you heard any feedback on that?
I unfortunately have not, no.
Okay. So to be determined on that. I think we'll probably know more at the end of the year to see how many operators employed that strategy and, what kind of success they had with it. So that's definitely something I think to keep an eye on and revisit. Okay, a question here on a specific slide. So on the slide that showed customers putting safety as a priority after COVID-19 ends, it showed 78% safety and only 22% sustainability. What is in sustainability on this question to the customer? Oh, so what does the sustainability mean? Dan, do you know what that refers to?
Yeah, so all those were consumer perceived. So however the consumer perceived each one of those topics is how they were scoring it. Just like safety, we didn't define safety, it's just how the consumer perceived it.
Great, makes sense. Okay. Do you expect some office dining to be discounted completely and larger micromarkets being established in larger office environments? Dan, any thoughts on that? That's a good question.
I have not seen any data around that, but boy, is it a great opportunity for MicroMarkets to tap into that opportunity. But I have not seen specific information around that.
Yeah, that's it kind of goes in line with what I was talking about promotions. Offering certain deals, especially during different day parts, which is a strategy that can work really well in MicroMarkets. As for office dining being discounted completely, I don't know if that would be like a cost that the employer would absorb. That's an interesting idea. But again, I think these strategies are all worth talking about with your accounts. Obviously your accounts want to keep their employees happy, and you want to stay. You want your business, so you want to stay in there. I think again, like this is the time to have some conversations, and maybe bring out some really innovative approaches. That it's ripe for all that right now. So I think if it's something that might make everybody happy, it could be worth a shot. So definitely worth considering. Okay, another question here. Are consumers perceiving fresh food options or frozen food options safer than the other? What do you think, Dan?
That also, I have not seen specific information on that. It's just been a lot more convenient for them, and it's helped them on spoilage. But what I do know is from a safety standpoint, individually wrapped products we've seen succeed during the COVID environment.
Yeah, that's something we've definitely seen, especially like since someone brought up coffee service, an office coffee service, there was kind of move towards bulk and, not using plastics as much for a sustainability and an environmental standpoint. And right now that's all kind of, like you said, everything has taken a backseat to safety. People would rather have something individually wrapped, even if it's in plastic, because they want to make sure nobody else touched it. And so, I think I don't really have any data on that either, unfortunately, but I think it's important to note that individually wrapped single serve is kind of the way to go right now. Okay. So what are we hearing around the country as far as serving nursing homes that have been preventing all outside visitors? That used to be a fruitful segment. I don't have any data on that. Dan, do you?
Gosh, I'm striking out here. I do not have any information on that either. But what I do know, looking at another data source that we have, it's distributor shipments to operators, and specifically looking at the healthcare categories or healthcare operator segment. The categories that we subscribe to have been growing in healthcare, and within healthcare, it's hospitals and long-term senior care living. Both have seen growth.
Great. Okay, another one just came through. Oh, no, same one. Well, I had somebody here who made a point that research shows that credit cards are actually filled with more germs than cash. I had not heard that, but that's something interesting to consider. Dan, do you have any research on that?
No, but I have seen a large number of people use iPhone Pay. What we're also seeing as a trend is multiple orders under one order. So say, Abby, you and I want to grab lunch. Maybe you'll pay for the meal, but I'll Venmo you. So that reduces the amount of times where you got to touch cash or credit, so on and so forth. But that might just be anecdotal information. So yeah, I don't have any information around that question.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I guess, when we're talking about cashless payments too, there's a difference between, using a credit card and then actually having like an app that you're paying with, whether you're scanning a code on your phone or you've downloaded a loyalty app and you're you've entered your credit card information through that app and you pay for it that way. I mean, that's obviously the safest way to pay for anything because there's absolutely no contact whatsoever. So, you know, I think that's why we're seeing that particular increase in cashless payments, and people who might not have been so willing to put their credit card information in their phone before and pay that way are seeing the benefits of it, seeing how easy it is. And then, you know, cherry on top, if you can earn points and get some discounts or free food and beverage products in there as well. So, again, I think that's why we're seeing such an increase in cashless. I just got a question here. Do you happen to know the additional cost to the vending companies to retrofit their machines, cost per machine, to a touchless vending machine? I do not know the cost. I think that would depend on, you know, the type of vending machine and, you know, the supplier you're working with for the technology, but there's a lot of options out there. We talk about this a lot. In automatic merchandiser, you know, there's a lot of different options. So I can't give you an exact number, unfortunately, on that one. That might be all the questions here. Oh, I did have somebody who wanted to know if they could see the slides in the recording. We're actually going to have this up on the website for the next year. So there will be, for anyone who wants to actually come back and reference these, just a reminder that you can go ahead and you can download the PDF so you have the slides to reference, but we'll actually have an on-demand version of this webcast at vendingmarketwatch.com for the next year, and we'll send you a link to that via email in the next 24 hours. So if anyone else is interested in holding on to this information and revisiting it, that's probably the best way to do it. I think, oh, here's another one, okay. This might have already been mentioned during the presentation, but how long did it take for the industry to bounce back after the 2008 recession? Dan, what do you think of that? Did you have?
Yeah, we were, I'll try to pull up the slide here on my computer, but we were taking a look at total operator spend, and that was our identifier of how long it took the food service industry to bounce back. And it took 4.5 years for operator spend to start growing again. So prior to the recession, food service, there was a year-over-year growth for decades. 2000 hit, it dipped quite a bit for 4.5 years, then it started to spike up again.
Great. And obviously this is a slightly different situation, so it's not going to be apples to apples. I wish we could see the future and have a better idea to know what to expect, but I think it is important to kind of look historically and see what we can learn from that. Thank you, Dan. Okay, I think that's all the questions. Great. Well, again, Dan, thank you so much for your time today and sharing all this information with us. And thank you so much to Tyson Foods for sponsoring this webinar. I think it's a lot of valuable information during what's been some challenging times for the industry. So, again, just a reminder to download the PDF, and you can have those slides for your reference. And check your email in the next 24 hours. We will give you the link to the on-demand version of the webcast so you can revisit it on your own time or, you know, share it with your colleagues. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for attending, and I hope everyone enjoys the holiday weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.